Hey everybody, it's Andrew here and welcome back to the channel. So, happy Monday everybody. We're going to have some pretty broad updates. We're going to go over what's happening with the stock market, what's happening in trending news. Not a lot of news on Social Security, but we do have this new program that's going to give some people a guaranteed universal basic income every month. And like we've talked about in previous videos, this is something it's kind of an experiment that a lot of cities are trying at the city level. They're going to kind of record data, see how these things go. And if data comes out good, more and more cities and states are expected to do this. So let's discuss the details. But before we jump into it, do me a quick favor, hit like, hit subscribe, and share this channel with anyone who you think might find this helpful. This is a community for seniors, and my job here is to be a voice for you and be a voice for seniors to make sure President Biden keeps his promise to increase Social Security benefits, increase SSI and SSDI, and even potentially include a stimulus check for seniors in this next stimulus package. Of course, Bernie Sanders is still fighting for that, but things are not looking great with Joe Manchin pretty much putting the whole thing on hold. So, with that said, guys, let's jump right into it. But first, let's do a quick update on daily trending news. And also, I just want to point out that we're going to be starting my second channel tonight, The Andrew Paulo Show, and we're going to be doing a bingo night every Monday night. So if you guys want to play bingo with us, just click the link in the description here or in the comments, or just search The Andrew Paulo Show. We're going to be playing every Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Central Time. So every Monday night, 7:30 p.m. Central. We're going to have a bingo night live so you guys can play with us. There's also going to be a live chat so you can chat with us and chat with the community. Should be a fun time. So again, thank you guys for your support, and that will be launching tonight at 7:30 p.m. Central. So let's talk about daily trending news. Then we're going to talk about this universal basic income program that some cities are doing. And currently Pelosi's in the news trending. She's getting hit over climate change and for getting rich off stocks, where really she kind of has a conflict of interest. A lot of senators are pushing to not really allow congressmen to invest in stocks because it makes sense, right? They're supposed to be serving the people and doing what's best for the people, but then when when they have to do things like raise minimum wage or increase Social Security benefits, things like that, those things can hurt the stock market. It specifically hurts certain stocks they're invested in, but then they're allowed, to still invest in stocks and have this conflict of interest. And really, it's been crazy because she has an annual income of about $200,000 per year, which obviously is really high. But her stock portfolio, her and her husband's, has grown to like 200 million, which a lot of people say should be basically impossible based off of that income. So really, they're saying that this conflict of interest could almost be like an insider trading type of situation. But she's also being slammed for her push for climate change, basically being called a hypocrite. This article says Pelosi spent over $500,000 on private jet flights, despite claiming that we have a moral obligation to reduce emissions. Now, private jets are one of the least efficient things when it comes to emissions, and they're known for being way worse for the environment than just regular flights. It makes sense. If you have a private jet with 4 or 5 people, using all that fuel, it's going to waste a lot more fuel and create a lot more emissions compared to a plane that can fit 2, 3, 4, 500 people, right? So it looks like over the last couple of years, she's taken dozens of private jet flights, wasted $500,000 on that, and caused so much more green gas emissions, while at the same time saying that addressing climate change is basically a religious issue. Like, this should be such a strong issue that Democrats should not fold on this. So let me know in the comments, guys. Do you agree with this? Do you think Pelosi is a hypocrite? Honestly, I'm not going to lie. It looks pretty bad. So also, Pelosi in trending news is that too many members of the Senate trade in stocks. And this is according to members of the Senate who are in charge of the banking committee. Now, Nancy Pelosi made headlines a few weeks ago when she was asked, should congressmen be allowed to trade in stocks, despite the fact that this is a conflict of interest, and it could really be a thing where it creates a bias, and they don't want to do things like increase Social Security benefits or increase SNAP benefits, things like that, because the more funding that gets funneled towards those who are lower income or those who are fixed income, really that usually ends up causing an increase in tax. And when you increase taxes on companies, that usually results in their stock prices going down. So it's definitely a conflict of interest, and a lot of people, this has really been trending lately, right? There's been this big push, not to say there's going to be a huge change anytime in the near future, But it's nice to see a stronger push. This is something that's been getting a lot more momentum. And Nancy Pelosi is sticking her ground here. She says, you know what? It's a free market. We should be able to trade, things like that. And on the one side, I can kind of see where she's coming from, right? Like, if you can trust congressmen to do the right thing, they want to feel like they can still invest in stocks as well. But on the other hand, when, you have people doing things like voting against a minimum wage increase or voting against increasing social security benefits or voting against the next stimulus check, and they're saying they can't afford it, the government can't afford to do these things is what they're saying. But then you see all the different laws being changed over the last 20, 30, 40 years is really tipping the scales towards the rich getting richer, right? So real estate prices going up, the stock market going up. I mean, the pandemic really pulled the curtain back on things and showed that like these markets are really controlled by our government's policies, right? We saw the pandemic, everything crashed, stock market crashed, we thought real estate was going to crash. Then the government and the Federal Reserve did things to really control the market and steer it back in the right direction. So that really showed us that, hey, the government is doing whatever they have to do to make sure that stocks and real estate continue to go up, even during a pandemic. So we know that these policies are really pushing these markets higher. And that creates a bias, right? Because we have congressmen putting all their money into stocks and real estate. And then we've seen over the last 20, 30 years that all the new wealth, all the money that's being created in this country is flowing towards the top. So it makes total sense, right? This is a biased. I mean, I could see why a lot of people would say congressmen should not be allowed to invest because it creates this bias, and they're really there to serve the American people. So, guys, let me know in the comments what you guys think of this. It's a really interesting thing that's been happening lately. And with that said, let's take a look at this city that's doing a universal basic income pilot program. And they're going to be giving people monthly checks for 2 years. Then afterwards, they're going to look at that data and see, what were the outcomes? Did this have a positive effect on these individuals? And could it potentially have a positive effect on the economy as well? Now, universal basic income is something, it's really controversial, right? Because this is different than Social Security benefits. Social Security, you've paid into the system for decades. You're basically just getting your money back, hopefully with some interest in a sense. And universal basic income really doesn't do that. It basically entitles you to this minimum monthly payment every month, even if you haven't paid into the system yet. But for whatever reason, a lot of cities have been trying this lately. There's been a big push, especially over the last couple of years after they did the stimulus checks and after they did the monthly stimulus checks for families with kids. I mean, in a lot of ways, those direct payment programs were shown to work not only to help the American people, but also stimulate the economy. So since then, there's been a lot of cities that are trying these universal basic incomes at the city level in small bunches, maybe like a few hundred or a few thousand people. They're going to gather that data, and then depending on how that data goes, you might see more cities and states doing this at a bigger scale. So let's take a look, folks. This article is titled, Martin Luther King Jr. Advocated for Guaranteed Income. Now experiments are taking place in his hometown and other cities around the country. And they're doing this for 2 years, so 24 months, and they're going to do two different things, right? So they're going to do it two different ways and see how this goes. So what they're going to do is they're going to give half of the participants a lump sum in the very beginning of $4,300 and then also give them $700 per month for the remaining 23 months. Now, the other half of the people in that program are going to get $850 per month for 24 months with no lump sum payment. So the thought here is they're trying to see is if you give someone a lump sum in the beginning, are they going to use that to pay off their debts and really kind of jumpstart their financial situation? Maybe pay off some credit card debts, maybe buy a car, things like that, right? A lot of people can't work as much because they, have trouble getting there. Cars are so expensive. So they're trying two different methods and they're going to see which one works best. And I think this idea is really cool. And this is something they're doing in many cities across the country. It's kind of there's a program they're doing where mayors in different cities are kind of creating these programs to see how they go. And one thing that would be interesting to see is if they started doing this for seniors specifically, right? So for seniors who are on a fixed income, specifically on the moderate to low income scale, if they gave seniors a little bit of a boost with a universal basic income program, I think this would go a long way, especially when the government is taking really long to increase Social Security benefits as promised. So let me know in the comments, guys. Let me know what you think about universal basic income in general. Do you think it's a good idea? Some people think it's a great idea. Some people think it's not fair because these people actually haven't paid that many taxes, like seniors on Social Security who have paid taxes their entire life. But so far, limited data from some of these programs have shown that it actually goes a long way in helping people. A lot of people think that this money will be abused, like people will just use it to quit their jobs and buy drugs and whatnot. But so far, from the limited data we have, most people use this responsibly. Like if you see here, results following the second cohort of recipients found that mothers' ability to pay their bills on time increased to 83% from 27%. So single mothers who are low income who received these monthly universal basic income payments, they immediately started paying their bills on time. People who are struggling to pay their bills, pay their rent, they immediately started using the majority of that money responsibly to pay their bills. Also, those who had emergency savings climbed to 88% from 40%. So again, a large portion of that money was used responsibly to save it away for a rainy day in case an emergency comes up, so you don't have to use a credit card, get in further debt, and kind of have that debt spiral really, continue, right? So they're using it to save, they're using it to pay their bills, and their ability to pay for food went up to 81% from 64%. So when you're giving these universal basic income payments to those who are lower income, they generally spend the majority of the money on basic necessities like buying food, groceries, paying their rent, paying off credit card debt. And I mean, let's be honest here. Some people don't like these programs because they say, well, if you give someone $1,000 a month, they're just going to go buy an Apple Watch and the new iPhone and things like that. And, you're going to see people spending some money frivolously. And, I understand where people are coming from. And there's always going to be some people who abuse the system. But it seems like for the large majority of people, when they're getting these monthly payments, they're using the majority of the money responsibly. It's an interesting idea, guys, and we should see more cities doing this over time. And to end this video really quick, I want to just talk about inflation for a second. It's a big week when it comes to inflation data. The CPI index should be coming out on Thursday, and that's going to show what inflation was in January compared to December and compared to January of last year. Of course, we know that seniors are one of the groups that are getting hit the hardest when it comes to inflation because seniors are on a fixed income and they're not getting raises like other people are getting. Of course, they got the COLA adjustment, but that's only 5.9%. Now inflation's coming in at about 7%. So on Thursday, we're going to see where inflation stands compared from January to December and January to January of last year. So we got a lot of info coming this week. Don't forget to subscribe, guys. I will keep you posted as things develop. And to end this video, I'm going to leave you with this clip talking about inflation and the fact that those who are low income are really getting hit the hardest by inflation. Now, wealth in this country has ballooned by almost 25 to 30% since the pandemic started. And so people with stocks and real estate, their wealth is growing and they can afford to deal with the inflation. I mean, those who are better off, the inflation is hurting them. But it's more of something they can deal with. People who are lower income, they're really struggling due to inflation. So this is why we need to get this next stimulus package passed. We need President Biden to increase Social Security benefits. All of these things that we talk about on this channel are more important than ever because inflation is so bad. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Again, don't forget to subscribe. I will keep you posted on everything that affects seniors across the board, things like Social Security changes, and what's happening in politics and the economy at large. So if you'd like to stick around, guys, let's take a look at this clip on inflation. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video.
Like the Mosers, inflation is stressing out American families across the country. And while politicians and pundits are screaming about who's to blame, for fact's sake, let's walk through what's really going on here. Bottom line, prices are higher than anyone would like. But for some of us, we can afford it, and some of us cannot. Underscoring the reality that we have two very different economies in this country. Many Americans saved money during the pandemic, with household wealth up a record 28%. If you own a home, if you own stocks, they're all worth more. And a lot of those people are out there spending, and that is driving up prices. But for millions of other Americans, they don't have that savings. They don't have that cushion. And though hourly wages are up, those wage increases are wiped out when you're paying more for rent, gas, and groceries. So what can be done? Well, there's basically three options. Number one, the Fed can raise rates. They can change monetary policy. That would likely slow the economy, but that's not going to happen for months. Number two, fix the supply chain. But keep in mind, it is a global problem that the U.S. government cannot fix on its own, certainly not overnight. And number three, consumers could slow down their spending. If Americans stopped buying so much, it would bring down demand as well as prices. For fact's sake, no one is shrugging off inflation, but we are a country with very different economic realities. Some don't like these higher prices, but they can keep paying, while millions more are getting crushed and panicking over the days to come.